The county fair, an American tradition where there's something for everyone, from rides for the kids to livestock exhibitions for the 4-H'ers, to cooking competitions and farm equipment demonstrations for the adults. But as the tastes of the American public have changed over the years, so have the attractions at county fairs, like this one in Goshen, Connecticut, where World of Photography went to document the work of photographer Michael Bargo.
I began taking photographs of monster trucks almost by accident. There was a drag strip nearby me in Wisconsin, and once they had some monster trucks up here as an exhibition, they were crushing cars. Well, since I've been doing four-wheel drive travel articles and articles on different vehicles, I did articles on the monster trucks. And it turned out that the editors loved the articles, and they hadn't seen any vehicles like that before. And they had this dramatic action of flying into the air and crunching them with 15,000 pounds of their weight. And so that it picked up really fast and became an extremely popular phenomenon, virtually overnight. And since I'm from Chicago, and most of the monster trucks were and still are located in the Midwest, for example, Barefoot and Bigfoot are in the St. Louis area. Illinois and Missouri and Ohio and Indiana have a great deal of monster trucks. It was easy for me to travel to the trucks and cover them. I didn't have to pay outrageous travel expenses flying in from LA or whatever. And magazines began to ask me to do special issues on monster trucks, and I became the major contributor to all the special issues that have been done.
The growing interest in monster trucks, which are all custom-made, hand-built, one-of-a-kind vehicles, led Michael Bargo to begin documenting the phenomenon. Here's the result: monster trucks, car crushers, and crowd pleasers. Photographing these monsters isn't simply a matter of point and shoot.
Well, when the human eye looks at something in the sunlight, they can look at the shadow, the part in shadow and the part with bright light on it, and they can average it out. But with film, you can only set the f-stop and shutter speed and ASA on one exposure value at a time. And so if you expose for an item of a person or an automobile or a monster truck in bright sunlight, the part that's in bright sunlight will come out fine, but then it'll automatically overcompensate and the part in the shadow will be too dark. Even if you're using low ASA films, it can come out so dense it'll be almost black. So what you have to do is meter both the part in sunlight and the part in shadow, and use the fill and flash to fill in the part in shadow until you get something that looks more natural, more pleasing to the eye. Especially when you're working with vehicles like monster trucks or cars or anything. People have seen them, probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cars in their lifetimes. And if the paint doesn't look just right, if the surface isn't glossy enough, or if it's too dark, or if the undercarriage is too dark and the shadows are too black, people will notice that right away. So I found that the best compromise is to fill in the shadow to where it's maybe a stop or less than the brightest part of the vehicle, the part that's in bright sunlight. Well, I found that the only way I could really control the fill and flash I was using was to use an extremely accurate light meter and a flash meter. In that way, then I could calculate the f-stop with the flash, as well as know what the ambient light f-stop was, the sunlit part. So what I do is I first set my camera. Well, I have both 2¼ and a 35 millimeter. And what I have to do first is find the f-stop. It's the f-stop you're searching for, because the shutter speed is really determined by the sync speed of the camera. Unless you're dealing with a lens with a built-in leaf shutter, such as some 2¼ cameras have, those will synchronize at any shutter speed. But most cameras, for example, mine synchronizes at 1/80th of a second. So I have to measure light at 1/80th of a second first, knowing the ASA of the film. Then secondly, I can set up the strobe and move my strobe closer into the subject or farther away until I obtain an f-stop that's only about a stop less than the f-stop, than the ambient light reading. So, for example, if there is a 2 or 2½ stop difference between a sunlit part and a shadow, I can move my strobe in closer and have it light up the shadowed area until it's a half stop or a full f-stop lower than the part lit by ambient light. Then that looks more pleasing to the eye. In an extremely bright day, were I to meter on only the glossy sunlit surface, the shadow would be so dark it would look black. It would look very awkward. It would be a photograph that wouldn't even be usable. The problem I had in shooting the Godzilla truck was that I wanted to shoot the shadow side of the truck. Now the truck was crushing cars in a north-south direction, so that the sun was coming from the west and I was going to be on the east side. I chose that side specifically because the crowd of bystanders would be behind the truck and it always makes for a more colorful photograph. So what I had to do was measure the ambient light on the truck, and then I had to use the strobe to fill in the shadow side until it became close to the ambient side. It turned out to be f8, and at first the reading on the strobe was f4, which means I had 2 stops less light than I needed. So I had to move the strobe in closer to the truck until I obtained an f8, which would have been the same as the ambient light. That makes the truck look perfectly natural, as if there was sun on both sides, and it's not overexposed as if I would have had a strobe too close or had it on too powerful a setting. Well, it's important to have a powerful strobe, because in daylight the sun is so bright that a weak strobe won't even show up or won't even be effective at filling in flash, except in the shortest distances, for example 10 to 12 feet. Most of the dedicated inexpensive strobes people get are effective up to maybe 8 or 10 or 12 feet, but after that, if you want to illuminate a large object like a monster truck in the cars it's crushing, you have to have a much more powerful strobe. Most of the strobes available that have shoulder carrying straps for large heavy lead acid batteries are much more effective in that kind of a situation. You can also get accessory batteries to make your strobe more powerful and to make it recycle faster. My advice to anyone is to start shooting something that interests you first, whether it be horses or pets or dogs or vehicles or monster trucks or ocean landscapes or whatever. Because the more interested you are in something, the more motivated you'll be to go back over and over again and work out all the little exposure problems you'll have, the composition problems. And whenever you do anything over and over again, you always get better at it.